Everyone loves a little bit of Bundesliga. And now that we're in the international break, we can look at the season so far, 7 games in. Who are the main runners and riders? Who have been making the headlines? What are the transfers that have actually paid off? This was a season shaping up to be a bit different for the Bundesliga with Harry Kane coming in, but a lot of the other usual runners and riders actually picking up some really strong momentum with some really strong transfers, coaches, and a few other bits and pieces in between. One of the clubs that everyone was paying a lot of attention to in the off-season and straight away was tuning into watching the results for was Bayer Leverkusen, who are top of the Bundesliga after 6 games gone. They opened their campaign against Leipzig, which was very much a top of the table clash really from the first match day. They won that 3 goals to 2, and it was a very impressive result, a very important game for Xabi ball to really stamp a mark on this season with some of the new signings like Jonas Hoffmann, Victor Boniface, Granit Xhaka really coming in and putting their stamp on the team really early on in the season. And it didn't really let up from there. That was really a sign of things to come. Beating Gladbach 3-0 the following week, virtually the exact same team. Grimaldo getting involved in the action this time. And one of the patterns we're going to see, and you'll see it on the statistics here, these ratings are out of 100. But when you actually watch Leverkusen, that back three have got a lovely dynamic on the go where one of them just goes and overloads the attack, depending on where they see the weakness in the opposition. So in some matches, we're seeing Tapsoba really scoring well out of 100, and in some games, it's costing out Odilon. Maybe it just pushes a little bit higher. Tapsoba against Bayern Munich has got a goal line clearance there, which helps his rating out of 100. But drawn away to Bayern Munich, this was a really big result. And I think Leverkusen really could have won this game, to be quite honest with you. But coming away with a draw, I think they'll be more than happy to do it. Palacios coming off the bench and scoring. I'm pretty sure that was a penalty as well. Yeah, it was. A wee bit of deja vu. But they've also had to contend with Europa League football. And yeah, they've maybe not had the most difficult opposition thus far, but they've dealt with them in good fashion and come back to domestic football and not missed a beat. They are scoring over 3 goals or more virtually in every single match so far this season. And with 7 games in, that is a phenomenal tempo. Obviously in Europe, it's maybe a wee bit different here away to Molde. Heavily rotated team, but getting a 3-0 victory in the derby right before the international break is just sealed them top of the Bundesliga at this international break. And really, there were a lot of people's outside shout for if someone could dethrone Bayern this year, maybe it could be Leverkusen. And the form that Boniface is in, the goals he's scoring, and especially how well that Xabi Alonso is doing with managing the minutes of some key players like Frimpong, Wirtz, Boniface in particular, I feel it's only going to come back and pay them dividends later on in the season. So it'll be really interesting to see if they do any business in January, if they do take the Europa League seriously once they get to the knockout stages. But it feels like they've got a Bundesliga title challenge capable 15 players that they can call upon. It's just that workload when there becomes more fixtures, will that slow them down? Now, if you told me at the beginning of the season, by this international window, Stuttgart would be sitting in second, I would have called you a madman. Stuttgart got relegated, promoted, really battled against relegation since returning, and they've been really struggling to recreate themselves over the last 2 seasons in the Bundesliga. They've done some player trading, they've really struggled to get consistent form and really get themselves really established in the league. Up and Bayern just run the show, and when you see Bayern in the summer go and buy Harry Kane from Tottenham, you just think, right, well, that's it. They've got the proper Lewandowski replacement. It's probably going to be as you were in terms of the Bundesliga dominance, but it's not really quite played out that way. They're sitting in third at the moment, and Stuttgart's reigning second. Let's see how long that continues. Leverkusen, I do think, will be very seriously holding on to that number 1 spot for as long as possible. But at the beginning of the season, they go out against Bremen, who were very good last season, scoff them 4-0. Harry Kane breaks his duck, gets the season going, as does Matthias Tell from the bench. But one thing we do see from this Bayern Munich team as the fixtures roll through, even though they're Bayern Munich-esque victories, 3-1 here against Augsburg, 2-1 against Gladbach, who Gladbach normally beat them, but without Jonas Hoffmann and not Sommer as well, that Gladbach wasn't really the same animal as before. Harry Kane didn't turn up in this one. It was Matthias Tell from the bench. They then draw with Leverkusen, which we spoke about already. They beat Man United, but conceding 3 goals against this Ten Hag Man United, I think is a worrying sign. Huge 7-0 victory against Bochum that everyone expects, but then we get another draw away to a top 4 side in RB Leipzig. And Leipzig do normally get battered by Munich. I can say that quite often. It normally goes the way of Munich, but alas, not on this one. The goalkeeper situation has held. Bayern Munich back a little bit. And I think when Neuer returns after the international break, the defence will kind of level up a little bit. But as you can see, as we're scrolling through all these squad choices through these games, Bayern Munich don't have that many actual players. They're playing so many different players in the wrong position, or, you know, they're doing some wacky and wonderful things, and you might think, oh, it's just they're Bayern and they're dominant. But when you actually look at the bench, there's not much going on there. You know, they tried to rest some guys against Copenhagen. Copenhagen went 1-0 up. They had to mix it up, bring the big boys off the bench and get the result over the line. And yeah, they beat Freiburg 3-0 as well. But again, having watched this match, like, yeah, they were good for the result, but I don't think Thomas Tuchel's Bayern Munich is really kind of all singing, all dancing. They'll comfortably be top 4, of course, they're Bayern Munich. They'll probably just about keep into top 2, I think. But if they get an injury to like a Kimmich or a Sané, really do worry for them. Kane will still score goals. They've got enough centre-backs and a few other bits and pieces where they're probably not going to derail too much, but I do feel that, like, if Sané goes off the boil, he gets injured. Coman has been doing well recently as well, but what are the solutions Thomas Tuchel brings in these situations? I'm not convinced from what we've seen in some of the, you know, the Leverkusen and the Leipzig game in particular. And over the last 3 or 4 seasons, we've probably all expected the wheels to kind of fall off of Dortmund, kind of somehow, because they've sold Sancho, they've sold Haaland, they've sold Bellingham. How can they keep up that kind of pace of trying to push Bayern Munich and outdo them when they're just giving away their best talents every summer, basically one at a time? And they're sitting in 4th at the moment, and, you know, they win 1-0 at the beginning of the season against Cologne. They've still got a good squad. There's still some really good players in here, but as you can see with some of these draws they were picking up early season, the manager came under a lot of fire early doors, but, you know, they've not been convincing. They're not the same level. They are now just like a top-end Bundesliga team. That's kind of the situation they find themselves in. I don't think there's any elite world-class players in this Dortmund side anymore that really does separate them from the pack. Yeah, sure, like, Bino Gittins might turn into something. Marco Reus is amazing, but, like, he's not peak anymore, let's be honest. Julian Brandt's cool. So is a few of these other guys. Schlotterbeck is probably the only world-class player in this team, in my opinion. But they're all just good. And I think they find themselves in 4th, and I think, like, 3rd, 4th is probably where Dortmund are going to lie for the rest of the season. Not picked up a win yet in the Champions League. They'll have a double header coming up against Newcastle, and that'll be a very important one for their season, how it does pan out overall. And that top 4 is super tight at the moment, you know, with only 2 points separating them all, as the fixture list starts to pile up with some midweeks and maybe some cup games as well come into the reckoning between now and the winter break. It is all to play for, I think, for Leverkusen to keep ahead of Bayern Munich here, and with the rest of the chasing pack, like, hey, I wouldn't write anything off this season. You know, Leverkusen will have Europa League to contend with later on, and again, they're not immune from injuries and important players really derailing their form potentially as well, so you never know how real world football pans out. There's a lovely little clutch of clubs just in behind this top 4 that have been doing pretty well as well, and, you know, I'm not too sure they could necessarily make a big difference to the makeup of that top 4, but I do think they'll be putting a lot of pressure on those top positions and becoming really formidable. Because the Bundesliga as a whole division is about goals, and when you're watching football, that's what you want to see: end-to-end action, goal fest, goals galore, all that kind of stuff. And how good is this? The guys at QuinnBet have enhanced their UK welcome offer, where you can now get a free bet up to £35. It's for new customers that sign up only. You can check out the full terms and conditions on their website, quinnbet.com, or by clicking on the link that's in the description of the video. By clicking on the link that's in the description of the video, you support the content here at the channel, and I thank you in advance if you do so. It looks really impressive to me, but it is 18 plus, and remember, folks, always gamble responsibly. One of my absolute favourite teams in the Bundesliga is in number 5, and it's Hoffenheim. They love to score over 2.5 goals. They love being involved in games that have over 2.5 goals, and so far this season that has been the case all but once. You know, a 2-1 loss to Freiburg, which they're not too happy about for the 3 points, but Hoffenheim love to attack. They've been built on this 3-4-3, 3-5-2 gung-ho approach for as long as I can remember, and there's a lot of really prominent figures still in this club, like Kramaric, like Kaderbeck there at right back, Ollie Bowman, the goalkeeper, and there's a lot of other up-and-coming talents in this team as well, guys like Tom Bischoff, Grisha Promo, and I even see Wout Weghorst leading the lineup there now as well, Florian Grealish. Really talented squad. 3-1 here against Wolfsburg, 3-1 against Cologne. This was the exception to the rule, a 2-0 victory away from home to Union Berlin, where Andre Kramaric was in midfield. That's incredible. 3-1 loss away to Borussia Dortmund. That's kind of always on the writing with Hoffenheim. And then a 3-2 win away to Bremen. Again, very good side right before the international break. Sadly, in 6th place is RB Leipzig. And RB Leipzig, again, love over 2.5 goals. And in, you know, Champions League and Bundesliga, they've had that all but twice so far this season. Like we mentioned already, they lost 3-2 opening game of the season to Leverkusen. But again, like we mentioned, they spanked Stuttgart 5-1, 3-0 wiping there of Union Berlin, 3-0 against Augsburg. And what you're seeing here, guys, is the emergence of Luis Penda and Xabi Simons. Now, Leipzig in 6th at the moment, they aren't probably truly represented there. But I do think that for as much as Xavi Simons has been very exciting, so is Openda. I'm not sure this Leipzig team is as good as it was last year or the year before. So they're in 6th. I reckon they're probably good for top 4 still. In the Champions League, 3-1 victory there against Young Boys, as you would expect. One of the exceptions to the rule we have here is a 1-0 victory away to Borussia Mönchengladbach. 2 each draw with Bayern Munich. 3-1 loss there to Man City. And yeah, again, like, I don't think they've really troubled City. Look at that team. No points out of 100, really. They've not contributed much to the 90 minutes. And then a 0-0 draw with Bochum. I think the Leipzig team needs another little push of quality. Timo Werner can't even get into the team at this point, down to them being so regimented in the system. Openda's taken his role, and they're using Yusuf Poulsen as a more kind of target man. I would hope to see Ben Sesko come into that role, because he's an up-and-coming talent himself, and that could maybe give them that kind of Haaland factor that they've never really had. They've never had like that big target man that would really make the difference. They've tried Schick, they've tried Sorloth, Andre Silva. No one's really clicked in there. I hope Big Sesko could kick on for them, and I think that could be a bit of a missing piece element. But I don't really feel this team... Xavi Simons has been good, right? But I don't think this team's really properly replaced in Kunku. I mean, you've not got Olmo on the side as well. Sabitzer's long gone at this point. It just feels like Leipzig, they just don't have as much. Now, Wolfsburg are one of the few teams that have won the Bundesliga in recent history, and I know they're a team that many football fans from afar do check out for their scores just to see how they're doing. And overall, I really like a lot of the players that are in this squad, and it's nice to see that they're starting to take shape and really start to push up the table. When we look at the back four that have started the season here, Joachim Mæhle coming in alongside Vido Baku as the fullbacks is a really attacking intent from the beginning of the season here, particularly when you're bringing in a playmaker like Lovre Meyer, and then these kind of narrow forwards that they've got in Wimmer and Czerny in this lineup. 2-0 victory against newly promoted Heidenheim, 2-1 victory against Cologne with a very similar team, if not. Yeah, fullbacks are swapped around, which is fine. Key man, Max Arnold comes back in for a 3-1 loss to Hoffenheim, but they beat Union Berlin 2-1 as well. And we're maybe starting to see now, this is maybe getting closer to the best 11 now, with Moritz Jens, who was a summer signing to replace Mickey van de Ven, it would seem, getting a huge score there in a 2-1 victory against Union Berlin. We then go to a 1-0 loss against Borussia Dortmund, where, yeah, I think this is probably what the manager is going to recognise as being his strongest 11. That's 2 games in a row. When these guys have been fit and available, they've played. We make it to 3. No, we don't. The back line changes again, but Baku and Ziska coming in. This midfield shape with Wind up front. Wind seems to be definitely the nailed-on guy here. This is a very funny picture of him. And he's a funny guy. I watched him quite a lot last year. And then, yeah, this defence, again, second game. So the defence is quite undiscovered here. And that's maybe why they're not putting those results together, because there's still a bit of chopping and changing at the back. It does feel like the midfield and the forward line is starting to become cemented with some regular selections there. But yeah, Wolfsburg, very exciting team. And then rounding off the top 8, we have Europa League winners from not last year, but the year before. Eintracht Frankfurt, they started their season off with a 1-0 victory against Darmstadt. And then in Conference League action, is also kind of muddied the waters for them, playing Levski so early in the season. I know from being a Celtic fan, even if you're the bigger team, this just totally interferes with your entire pre-season, transfer window, everything. So this has not been an easy time here. It's good to see that Frankfurt haven't been losing, but a lot of these draws are very frustrating, to say the least. A lot of these teams that we're seeing that Frankfurt have been drawn against, those teams at the top of the league have been dispatching. They've been beating them comfortably. They beat Aberdeen 2-1, but Aberdeen put in a very good performance, and I think they felt, they could have got something out of that game on the night. 0-0 draw there, with Freiburg losing to Wolfsburg, losing in Europa Conference League there, and then beating Heidenheim 2-0. So, yeah, Frankfurt, they've not really let themselves down. I don't think they've really pushed themselves on yet this year. And again, they've lost a lot of talent in this summer, and they've changed manager as well, so maybe a bit of a downturn for them. So I think that top 8 of the Bundesliga, there's a lot of different interesting clubs going on there, and I think some of these clubs have got some form to catch on to, maybe some form will dip away, and it's going to be really interesting to watch how that top 4 develops between now and the winter window. In the comment section below, let me know, who do you think will be in the top 4 by the time we get to the winter window, and we'll revisit the comment section when we get there. I hope you had a good one, guys. On screen now is some other stuff that I made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Stay out of trouble, and yeah, catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.